Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979 is easily one of the most influential anime of all time. At the time, the Super Robo Boom was kind of in full effect, which mech anime was basically about robots with superpowers at the time, and Gundam came around and basically created the real robot genre, which takes a more military drama perspective on the mech anime series. Coming out during the Super Robo Boom, which was so massive and all-consuming, lasting about 2 decades. It's hard to get across how big the Super Robo Boom was to modern anime fans, but it basically made the isekai boom look cute by comparison. So it came out during this time period, and it did not do well because it didn't fit in with others of its genre. It ended up basically getting canceled, and through some clever negotiation, they managed to get a 4-episode extension on the show. It was supposed to run for 52 episodes, so a full year, but it got cut down to 39. They negotiated to 43. A bit later, Bandai managed to negotiate some rights to create plastic models called Gunpla based on the Mobile Suit Gundam property, and it created an explosion of popularity, basically creating the real robo subgenre and leading to basically where mech anime is now. When you think of mech anime, you probably think something more in line with Gundam than a Mazinger Z. In the far future of Universal Century 79, humanity has colonized space, and they live in Earth and the colonies of the solar system. One such colony is the rebelling against the Earth Federation called the Principality of Zeon, who wants to basically gain their own independence. In this war for independence, mech suits called mobile suits are deployed mostly by Zeon, but eventually by the Earth Federation. And the creator of the first Federation mobile suits is the main character, Rei Amuro's father. And the most notable of the mech suits he creates is the Gundam. So the Gundam is a name of a specific mech suit, as I have learned by watching this. I always thought all mobile suits were called Gundams, but no, Gundam is a specific mobile suit. And after an attack on one of the colonies that Amuro is living in, he ends up piloting the Gundam and joins the crew of White Base, which is a carrier staffed entirely by horribly underqualified civilians that end up getting drafted into the military by the insane military dictatorship of the Earth Federation. One thing I really appreciate about Gundam is the sort of moral grayness and ambiguity of the conflict between Earth and Zeon, because the Federation is awful. They draft their citizens, they threaten imprisonment and execution if you don't do what they say. They're honestly not very good at protecting the people they're supposed to be protecting in the first place. And they end up using, in some circumstances, straight up children as decoys and test subjects specifically to give them an edge in the war against Zeon. But go over to the Zeon side, and you can understand why Zeon would want to rebel against the Federation. They're awful, right? But Zeon doesn't come out squeaky clean either. In fact, although there are plenty of, I would say, good, upstanding members of the Zeon forces, Garma comes to mind. That guy was pretty cool. When Zeon gets bad, they get really, really bad. At one point, a dude just launches a nuke at the Federation because he's losing, and he's like, well, they'd think I'm a pussy if I don't do it. So he just launches a fucking nuke at them. And then there's the sovereign son who gets compared to Hitler, and he's basically just like, gee, thanks, Dad. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. So, when Zeon gets bad, it gets really bad. But you can at least understand the perspective of where Zeon is coming from. The Federation are awful. And this is kind of exacerbated by the fact that there is an independent colony, which is the Side 6 colony, which is independent from the Earth Federation. So Zeon's motives are understandable. Another thing I do appreciate is the characters of the show asterisk. So some characters are very well developed, very well dug into, and have a lot of complexities to them. Rei Amuro, being the main character, is case study number one of an incredibly complex, well-handled character. There are, in fact, a few members of White Base that are really well handled. Scylla being one of them. Bright gets some good attention early on, and my favorite character, Frau Bo, also gets her time to shine. But they don't just focus on the main White Base cast. Boy, do they not. They also focus a bit on some of the Zeon generals, Zeon admirals, and Zeon soldiers. Like, there is attention placed to basically every military commander in Zeon, sometimes with a shocking amount of depth. On the other hand, sometimes they spend so much time delving into the characters I previously mentioned and the Zeon forces that a lot of the White Base people seem kind of undercooked. Like, I know Hayato is on the ship, could not tell you a thing about this man, other than he doesn't like being stuck in medbay. But I will also say that similarly, although they delve into some relationships, they also seem kind of rushed and undercooked. Like at one point, Mirai gets slapped by this guy who I was just starting to warm up to. And then like the next scene, you find out she loves him. And if that sounds fucking jarring, it is. It's not very well handled. And a lot of the relationships in the show are kind of like that. I really appreciate the Zeon Sovereign. However, he might be my favorite character other than Frau. Like, it's him or Frau, but like, because he's so like human and understandable. He looks like classic evil main bad guy, like laugh in your face, mwahaha kind of motherfucker. But like the first thing you see from him is this like devastation he feels over his son's death. This sort of like crippling depression that grips him throughout the rest of the story in the narrative. And even towards the end, he's like shit-talking his Hitler son and attempting to make peace with the Federation. And I really appreciate the sort of like nuance that this guy has, because keep in mind, like, this guy is trying to go for peace, and he seems to genuinely care about the people of Zeon and his family. He even says he formed a dictatorship just because it was the quickest, most efficient way to gain Zeon's independence. However, he also maybe murdered a guy and is definitely signed off on some of Zeon's war crimes. So again, it comes back to the sort of moral ambiguity of the show. It also delves into issues that a lot of military dramas just don't delve into, like supply issues, even like more subtle ones, such as what point they're running out of salt, which would be a major problem, and I like that the show addresses how that would be a major problem on a military vessel, like the lack of supplies. So it handles a lot of the military aspects really well, it handles the characters really well. Where Gundam actually kind of loses me is the action of the show. So a good half of every episode is dedicated to long battle scenes, and I appreciated them at first because I liked how there was a back and forth where you get to see Zeon's tactics and you get to see the Federation's tactics and you get to see how they're responding to each other. But over the course of 43 episodes, with very few dialogue-focused episodes, at least exclusively, there comes to be so much action across the entire show. And it's honestly not very well directed, so you kind of get lost at some points, and it's kind of hard to tell what's happening in certain circumstances. And I mean, part of it is just like over the course of the entire show, I just found myself like tuning some of it out and just like not paying attention. Like, it's really hard to try and stay engaged with this much fucking explosions constantly happening. I'm sure I probably missed stuff during it. In fact, I know I did. It took me a while to realize Matilda died until like the end of the episode. So I love the complexities and depth of Mobile Suit Gundam, but I'll be damned if at some points it just doesn't get really boring. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye bye.